Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest version of Tales from Outer Space, where I take an HFY story from somewhere around the internet and read it aloud for your enjoyment. All the relevant links are down below. Like, subscribe, and all that YouTube gumph to help this video and channel grow. Anyways, as always, I hope that you enjoy. I would just like to thank the following Tier 5 patrons and channel members for supporting the channel: Datamagnet and Bob the Dragon. Thank you again. And now, on to the story. Why do we defer to humans? Written by Jdm5544. Why do we defer to humanity, you ask? The answer is a simple one for any of the rim species, but I understand that it may be more difficult to understand from your point of view. Allow me to explain. My people, the Narani, are rightfully considered the greatest scientific minds in our little corner of the galaxy. We are the ones who discovered the galactic conglomerate, after all. We also had the highest rate of technological advancement in our own little region of the arm, and were expected to surpass the galactic conglomerate within the century. Quite a feat, wouldn't you say? The Vergras are clearly the most populous, having a population of close to 500 billion compared to humanity, the second most populous, with just over 10 billion. In addition to the Vergras lay hundreds of eggs at a time and reach adulthood in a single human year. Why do we use humans' orbit for their home planet as a standard? Simple. It is so close to the average of all of our home planets' orbits that it is easier to use rather than create a new system. Now, as I was saying about the Vergras, that means that geniuses occur more often in their species than in any other for purely mathematical reasons, allowing them to achieve scientific breakthroughs quite often. The Sandman have the greatest of the arts of all the species in the room. A simple way for us to test our empathy is to read a sane man tragedy to the suspect, and if they do not break down in sadness, then we know of their condition. But their arts go beyond the literature, portraits, paintings, sculptures, and even music. None can hope to surpass them in these regards. And last but not least, the Thurians, the greatest warriors in the room. Their knowledge of war is unmatched in the room. Strategies and tactics are taught to them from a young age. To face Thurian assault fleets with anything less than overwhelming force is simply suicide. And even then, victory is not guaranteed. When the humans first met us, we were in the middle of a long and bloody war with no end in sight. The same man was simply hoping to avoid conflict wherever possible. Thurian tactics would often conquer. Vergras numbers would overwhelm, and the Narani science rained death upon all. This three-way war was fought over 100 human years, and it was over in less than 3 human years. Human science nearly matched our own, and would often understand how our weapons worked, if not how to replicate it. A single human soldier was oftentimes enough in simple combat for 100 Vergras, and with proper tactics as much as 1,000. Human tactics meant that, for the first time in war, the Thurians faced surprise attacks, traps, and hundreds of other things that neither the Vergras nor my own people had thought of. Perhaps most astounding of all, the greatest of the human arts was on par with the Saintman's own. In short, humanity was the second best at everything, which meant that they were the best in this war. They struck where we were weak. They did not attempt to match the Narani science with human science, but rather with numbers. They did not match the Vergras with numbers, but rather tactics. And they did not match the Thurians with tactics, but rather science. Did humanity conquer us, you ask? No, though we all expected it. No, instead humanity defeated us all and formed the Council. We expected the Council to be little more than a front for the human interests, and for a time it was. The humans were granted rights to colonize worlds that had never known them, to trade with others in an unfair exchange. Yet in time, the humans did something most peculiar. The Narani are organized by scientific advancement at degrees. In short, the more knowledge you can prove you have, the higher your position in our society. For example, I myself have 7 degrees in fields related to war and ships, and thus have a place in the middle of the Narani society. The Vagras have an even simpler system. The eldest amongst them lead those younger, as they live and die quickly, the oldest only ever having lived up to 25 human years old. Their leaders are routinely replaced. The Thurians had a military hierarchy, of course, their greatest warriors and generals making up the leadership of the worlds and keeping them organized and defended. Their high commander is a veteran of 70 battles, also I've heard. The Sanemans are perhaps the closest to humanity in the sense that there not being any true government. Instead, their people debate a course of action based on the merits of their culture. Rarely is anything done on their planet as a result. Humanity, however, had a curious method of government. Individuals would tell the masses they, and they alone, were the best choice for leadership, and would debate others who claimed otherwise. Yet often the positions they came to occupy were not ones of singular power, but collective power. It took an agreement of over 600 individuals to make any decisions, and even then it could be overturned by the military leader, who himself could make no laws. And even then it could be overturned by the justice dispensers. It was a confusing system. We quickly learned that humanity almost never agreed with each other, and would often have conflicts with those whose policies are almost identical. They had an unusual idea called compromise. Well, they despised it. It seemed to be the only way laws were passed. It was where they would concede on some points to enforce others. In fact, it was the very disagreement that allowed other species of the room to gain power in the council established by humans. But by this point, humanity had set themselves up as the traders and diplomats of the room. It had been a scarce 30 years since the war had ended, and yet the humans had already made it nearly impossible to wage war against each other. The Narani needed Thurian ships to defend against pirates while our science ships traveled. The Thurian needed Senman music and arts to inspire their troops, and the Saneman needed Vagras materials to make their great works of art. The Vagras needed Narani technology to ensure a humane quality of life for their many citizens. And there was humanity, traveling between the stars and trading with all, the middleman, as they called themselves, and aided in settling disputes throughout the realm. Yes, I assure you this is important to answer your question. The war had required all of our resources for 100 years that we had fought, and as a result, our exploration efforts were non-existent. As the war ended, only humanity had the resources to commit to exploration, and so they did so. And as we gained resources, so did we. In the last 10 years, the Council of the Room has nearly tripled its size, and even here humanity was odd. Its colonies, as opposed to being thankful and subservient to the homeworld, as was the case with every other species of the Room, instead demanded more freedoms and autonomy. And while it never escalated to full-scale war, it became quite tense amongst human colonies. So imagine our surprise when we met you, the galactic conglomerate ruler of the galactic center and rightful ruler of all the rest. And when you, host, so graciously offered us a non-voting seat in your parliament. We discussed it, and we decided to reject it and offer you a trade agreement. When you then sent us a proclamation that we would be conquered as a slave species if we did not accept your offer. Once more, we convened and discussed the issue, and once more, despite knowing it would lead to war, chose to reject your offer. Why do we defer to humanity, you ask? The answer is simple. Humanity, the most diverse and divided species in the room, of any that we had met until that point, voted on it, and they nearly unanimously voted to reject both deals. Imagine that, if you would. The single most divided species in our area had twice voted in near total agreement to reject this deal. Is there any parallel in your history? They assured us that we could fight against you, and more than that, we could win. We couldn't conquer you, no, but we could certainly wear you down. And we have, haven't we? This war has been going on for nearly 5 years by our measurements, and with humans at the lead, we have won battle after battle against you. This is your final attempt to gain knowledge and, as the humans say, get an edge over us. How does it feel to know that you have failed? To know that you started a war with the second best species at everything? Because I will tell you what you should feel. No, not you personally, I suppose, but your leaders, the organizers of this war. The humans have a saying based off the limbless reptile native of their home planet that it can be very dangerous and there is only one sure way to kill it: to cut the head of the snake. In this case, you are the snake, your leaders are the head. So tell me, what do you think your leaders should feel? They should feel nothing but fear. End of story. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed, and if you do, please consider supporting the author, even by popping over and leaving a thumbs up or a nice comment, just to show your appreciation for the story. However, if you wish to support this channel, there are links down below which will help immensely. I will see you all in the next one, and until then, I hope that you have a fantastic day. Cheers.